the other day, I was checking out something on the internet, and that's right, it was a Formula One site. I'm a big Formula One fan. And so every once in a while a really informative technical video is posted, and below that video are suggestions of videos that are related to the one that you're seeing. And since it was involving racing, there was a link to a Porsche 911 GT2 going around the Nürburgring in Germany faster than any production car in the history of the world. And I thought, well, that's something I want to see. So I clicked on it, and I've been watching racing since I was actively since I was about 12. I'm 48 now. And I mean, the Nürburgring, it's not a flat track, and it's dangerous. And I mean, he was going so fast that literally if he'd had a blowout or one slight wrong move, a big gust of wind, and it would have blown him right off the track. And this track has no soft barriers. I mean, it's like this hard metal railing most of the time. And you could hear the tires chirping and squealing as he was right on the edge of adhesion. And it struck me, because I thought, this is exactly the appropriate approach to life. And please understand, not in the sense of doing or accomplishment, but in the sense of right on the edge of what you can take mentally. To constantly be challenging yourself to not be satisfied with the way you understand it as it is. Because life is limitless just like you. And how are you ever going to be in that space if you're satisfied, if you're complacent, if you have the spiritual answer, right? If you have it, it's like you've won the chess game and now you're just gloating. You've won the chess game, and there's nothing the opponent can do to stop you from winning, and you're not going to allow the game to stop. You're going to make the opponent play until they actually have their king taken. And there's something inside human beings, some people, there's something inside of human beings that likes that in some sense. That likes this thought that I have control. I have control. And therefore I'm safe. What is that? That's fear. The idea of relief that you get when you think, I've got the answer, I've got it figured out, I have my eternity secured, I am in the right place. Here I am. And then you sit and gloat. Because that's exactly what I used to think, assume, believe, is that I did. I had the answer. And you know what that is? That's in this, equating this to the scene of that racing scene. That's the person who's on the side of the road, behind the barrier in the safety zone. It's okay. I've already got the answer. I don't need to race. I don't need to get in the car and challenge like that and live life like that on the edge. That's not safe. Why would I want that? I want comfortable, complacent. I got it. I'm not saying that in the sense of going around and saying, I know, I have the answer, I got it figured out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that inwardly. That's the assumption. There's nothing further to quench. My sins are forgiven. I know Jesus. Jesus loves me. My eternity secured. And it's the wiping your hands. And you're safe. And all these sinners are lost, and they're all seeking the answer, and I got it. And if they just knew what I know, they would be at quote-unquote peace. How much, what is peace when you're standing on the sidelines? Is that peace? When you're standing on the sidelines watching, I don't think that's the experience of peace. I think the experience of peace is being in the race car, right on the edge, in total trust of the road, the car, the tires, the moment. And you have so much trust in it that you're putting your life on that. At any moment, I could die. At any moment, something could happen. At any moment, and I'm going to completely give myself to that. See, that's the experience of being alive, and that's why that person is in that race car doing that. He's ever seen a yin and yang? He's the gray in the middle. He's not in the black, he's not in the white, he's in the gray in the middle. And that's the true state of peace. And his mind is not what's driving that car. He's in the state of rapture. He is going on instinct, the feel that he feels as he's driving that car. And he is proactively pursuing that art of driving. He's in the midst of it, in the center. It's called being on the center. And this being on the center is the place of peace. And that's not a place that you find by trying. You realize it by being. And it's constantly elusive. That's why you can only have it for moments in life. And the joy in life is the pursuit of that, which means your skills, your gifts. And this is what brings you rapture. This is what brings you fulfillment. It's not about doing anything. It's about being. And the only way you can be is if you know who you are. Without any fear. The less fear you have, the more you're able to give yourself to life, because you can operate in the mode of trust rather than force and control. You see, and that driver is not running on force and trying to control that car. He is feeling that car. He is feeling the road. And he is in that space and becoming and realizing in that space. That's why he's able to fly down the road so fast. Because he's not thinking about it. And see, the person that's on the sidelines will never, ever, ever know that feeling. They will never know that experience. Because they're not going to risk. It's easier, it's the complacent move to stay safe and to not delve into heresy. And I'm not saying just read a book about it and shake your head. I'm saying actually go down that road. And imagine a world where you don't need forgiveness. Imagine a world where you don't need a crucifixion. You don't need a Christ. You don't need a virgin birth. You don't need any of these things. Imagine that world and completely abandon the world of dependence. Now see how that's faith? You see how that's completely giving yourself to life and the risk that it presents? It's exactly the spiritual action. It equates to the exact physical action of that driver. That is one in the same pattern. Those two patterns are identical. So how is it going to feel alive to choose the one that's complacent? How are you ever going to feel alive? Because you know. How is that feeling alive? Knowing that you're the winner of the chess game. The chess game is therefore over. How is it feeling alive to continue to play the chess game knowing that you're the winner? What fun is that? That's only self-serving. You're self-loathing. Can you see that? And when you approach life with the idea that I got eternity secured, that's living a life of self-loathing. That's living a life of belief, no faith.
Because faith is the relinquishment of all belief. It's completely giving yourself, trusting life, trusting yourself to the void, to the unknown. That driver has no idea when he goes around the corner if there's going to be a deer there, an animal there. I mean, heck, a squirrel. If he's making a right-hand kink at 185 miles an hour and he hits a tiny little squirrel on his right side front, meaning passenger side front, that's going to lift the front of that car up. And as soon as that happens, the aerodynamics, the air blows that car right over, and he is now a passenger in a non-jet. And see, he is, if you look at the telemetry, he is flooring it. He's not hesitant. Complete and total giving of himself to it. And that's the only way he can achieve the fastest lap, which is satisfying to do that. Because that's an art, a skill that not many people can do. And if you can do it, it's extremely satisfying because no one can buy that, no one can rent that, no one can go and get that from you. It's yours. And so you feel alive. And so what is a spiritual life that is not in that space? I'll tell you what that is. That's inawareness. That's small mind. Why is it small mind? It's small mind because it's saying, this is all I need. Standing on the sidelines here watching these crazy nutcases driving by in the cars. This is all I need. This is good enough. Because I know. That is a complete space of emptiness. You know, think of Bach. And here's a man who's basically, the only limitation he really faced was that he had to write every note down. The notes are no good in his head. And the notes are no good if you play it once, meaning it to have the music carry forever. It has to be written down. And the only way then he could get what was in his head into the heads of others was writing every single note down. And he wrote so many notes, he didn't even hear a number of his major works. He never heard the B minor Mass. Hearing a piece of music he never actually heard. Which, I mean, if you've ever written anything, like words or music, imagine writing something and never going back and correcting or looking over or reconsidering what you wrote. And having it come out like that. Could Bach have done that standing on the sidelines? Or is the only way Bach is going to have to bring to realization something as magnificent as the B minor Mass. How on earth is he going to do that in the sense of life unless he's on the racetrack, flooring it? Because you don't write music like that on the sidelines. You write music like that in the trenches. Because you're pushing life to the maximum extent. And he had this amazing quote, Bach did. He said, about playing the organ is not difficult. You just press the keys, the right keys, at the right time, and the instrument plays itself. It was coming out of that guy so frickin' hard that he wasn't even having to try. That's what Bach was saying in that statement, and you guys have heard me say that so many times. He's writing this music and he's not even trying. That's why it doesn't have to be corrected. It's inspired. He's not living in a secondary means. He's living in inspiration. Is the person standing on the sidelines living in inspiration? They're living in complacency in the terms of life. And the only way we then can bask in the light of Bach is because he was willing to floor it at 180 around a blind right-hander in the frickin' forest, fearless. That's why it's not hard to play the organ when you're Bach. Because he doesn't have to think about it. It's just coming out of him. When you hear or observe someone who is in a position of fair command of some art, I mean, you just gawk. I mean, you can't believe that something so amazing and wonderful could exist. And I mean, these things happen out of nowhere. I mean, you could be on this, just walking to work in New York, and there could be a musician that's playing guitar that's just like, better than any guitarist you've ever heard. It's just they've never gotten discovered. But they have such a command of that instrument, you have to listen to it. You have to stop and listen to it. Because you can't find that anywhere. To be in the presence of art like that. And so this refers back to the racing, to be in the presence of art like that. And then it refers back to the spiritual realm. Because there's no other place a human being would rather be than to be in that situation of euphoria all the time. But that's not realizable. You can't do that. And you wouldn't want that because that would take away the euphoria of the unique experience. You see, and this is how life is. It's that tension. It's on and it's off. It's on and it's off. And to fight that is to fight the current. And so the idea is to allow it to be on and off and on and off. And to not tell it to stop doing that. But to allow it to do that. And that's the art. How do you do that and stay sane? Right? How do you allow life to harm you like that and to stay sane, to not want revenge and to not fight it? How do you do that? That's why experience is so important, because it avails you more available options to find understanding and to make sense of this thing called life, this paradox, which doesn't make any sense. Because that's how life is. It's elusive like that. It's an art. And to think you got it figured out, to think you know the answers, to think that, well, I might not know all the answers, but I have the main spiritual answers. To live under the assumption that you know blinds you. Because that's the only thing you can know. And that is self-loathing. What I just described. That is the act of self-loathing. To think that you know. See, and this is the paradox of life. It's not safe. That's the point. It's not safe. And it never will be safe. And the idea is to come into accord with its not safeness. To never take the assumption that it is safe or that you're safe, because you're not. Nobody is. And that's the paradox of life. And you have to come into accord with it. That's the real deal. Because the universe is a big place. And you see a lot of really messed up stuff in life. You see a lot of stuff like that. You see a lot of stuff you think, man, I don't ever want that to happen to me. You're surrounded by paradox. And the idea is to come into accord with that paradox. You come into accord with the non-answer. And you are at peace with nobody has the answer. Nobody has the final way. Nobody has the final anything. Because nobody is in charge and nobody knows what ultimately is going on. Nobody. Nobody could consciously know that. That is an impossibility. And you have to come into a place in life where it's just like, okay, I'm completely okay with that. But it's not a deciding to be okay with it. It's a just simply living. It's just like it's not even a consideration. Because you're not fighting life. Because it's fighting life to have to do things and fidget with life to make it come into accord. That's not coming into accord with life. This is what Watts was talking about with this whole idea of walking meditation in Zen. The idea isn't to sit and not participate. The idea is to participate in a state of meditation. In other words, you're on the road flooring it and you're in a state of meditation. Completely calm and trusting the situation. That's exactly what Watts is pointing towards. And no, it's not easy. He hadn't mastered it. No Zen master has mastered it. You can't. It's like saying you have finally had enough lessons on the organ. You have finally had enough guitar lessons. You have finally had enough drumming lessons because now you know. You know. You know. Neil Peart, step aside. I don't need any more lessons. I can play anything. I know. You will never hear a true artist, a true gifted artist, ever tell you that they don't need practice or that they have realized the full potential of the instrument. If you have met a person like that, they will never be a master. Because a master knows they will never master that instrument. It will always be running from them. We used to have these pianists that would come through and play at this church that I worked at. And one of the pianists said that if I miss one day, I notice my playing has worsened. If I miss 2 days, people that know how I play knows that it's worse. And if I miss 3 days, the entire audience will know. This is a guy that had been playing grand piano for something like 50 years. There's no such thing as finally with any instrument, and there's no such thing as finally in life. There isn't. You never can win the chess game. You are completely kidding yourself. A completely foolish thought is to think, I know. I got it figured out, man. I got eternal security figured out, man. I got the right answer. I'm worshiping the right God. I am praying to the right people. I have the right accountability groups. I am participating in the right groups that hold me to the right standards. I know the laws. This is a person that is living in denial, that is living in fear, that is living in self-loathing. And it's amazing to observe the denial of the entire thing. All of life, just complete denial. I know that because I was a Christian for 40 years, and that's exactly the way it was. It was just like, well, you just don't know. If you're not a Christian, you just don't know. You just don't know. And if you just had Jesus, man, it would be so much easier for you, brother, sister. It'd be so much easier for you. If you just simply knew the love of Jesus, that you're forgiven, because they're all walking around assuming everybody's a sinner. That is a mental game. That's what that is. They're all playing it. They are all playing that game. Thinking, I've got it figured out. I've won. I'm on the winning team. We win. We've won the chess match. Life is a chess match. We've won it. And it just so happens that I was born in the right family that led me to the right place so that I could become a Christian, so that I could become a Jew, so that I could become a Muslim. And now I know. And that's the one. And everybody else is lost. I'm on the right team. I'm in the right tribe. This is all fear. Denial. Can you see that? Here's the scary part that I had to face was that I was in a cult. That was what was scary. When I came to realize, holy crap, this is exactly the way cults behave. Imperialist. Everyone should be a Christian. If everyone was a Christian in the world would be a better place. That's called imperialism, and cults are imperialistic. Constantly this referring back to, well, what does the Bible say? What should I do? What does the Bible say? What does Jesus say to do? What's the right thing? What does the verse say? What do the scriptures say? That's how I was raised. I was raised with a father that was just like, when you have questions, you go to the Bible for answers. Everything you need is in the scriptures. That's how I was raised. And I'm like, that's exactly what a cult does. A cult has a book, and they know that that book, their book, is the book of truth. The Mormons have the Book of Mormons. The Muslims have the Quran. Everybody's got their book, and their book is the right one. Because you can't have any deviance in the tribe. You cannot deviate from the book. And so it was coming into this realization of everywhere I turn, the patterns say to me, I am in a cult. This is what cults do. I remember going to Disneyland as a kid, and we all wore the same color shirt, green shirt. And it all had the church logo on the front. And I'm like, cults do that. Everybody dresses the same. And you begin to see so many of these little subtle patterns, for me it was, I began to see so many of those little subtle patterns that I realized I'm living in a game. I'm living in a little mini matrix, a small world. And it's called Christianity. And it's this little world that all the other Christians live in with you. And life is this way. It's this way. There's Satan. There's God. There's Adam and Eve in the beginning. Fall of man. Christ comes. Forgiveness of man. Everybody that believes in Jesus is saved and goes to heaven. And it's this little world. And it's just, everyone is just on this earth to just make the best of it because it's a completely fallen situation. And that's the game. The game is, you're in a fallen world, in a fallen situation, and you have to make the best of it. And the way you make the best of it is, you go and you get as many people as you can to think just like you, to believe in Jesus just like you, to believe that they're a sinner just like you, to believe that they need forgiveness just like you, and to believe that they will be eternally with God just like you if they believe all this way. And the way you feel alive in this game is by getting people, quote unquote, converted. And the more people you convert, the more you've accomplished, it's more like, oh my God, I'm making more and more Christians. And it's just like, it's this idea that that's a good idea to do. And I was thinking, and I just say to myself, well, that's what cults do. That's what cults do. That's called imperialism. The whole world should think this way. And so as a Christian, you think it's completely, or I thought it was completely fine to think I'm right with all this, and then all the Muslims are wrong. All the Buddhists are wrong. They're all wrong. All the Mormons are wrong for sure. And certainly the atheists, my God, the scientists, those people are gone. They don't even believe in God. You see? And it's this idea that that's an appropriate way of thinking. The idea that it's appropriate to think I'm right and they're wrong. In a matrix, in a situation called life, which is completely outside of any kind of control. of any kind of like you can get your arms around it at all. There's none of that. Can you see how small-minded it is then to think, to assume that you have the eternal answer, that you have it figured out, that you and all your friends and all this history, you guys got it right and everybody else got it wrong? How is that appropriate? How does that make sense? And I realized I was in that madness. That's what happened to me. I realized I was in that madness and I thought, holy God, the world is so much bigger than I have assumed it. Life is so much more meaningful, deep, and unbelievably unreal than I could have ever comprehended. Because I was living in a gaslit room. I'm not going to feel alive if I'm living in my head. I'm not going to feel alive if I'm walking around with the Christian or Muslim or Jewish paradigmatic lens. And I can only see the world through the Jewish lens. I can only see the world through the Christian lens. I can only see the world through the Islamic lens. How much of the world are you seeing then? A very small part, a very small world. And I mean, I'm not saying that to be degrading. I'm like, psychologically, logically, look at it. It's not playing the game to win. It's surviving the scenario to the end, where you finally collapse. You get rid of this nasty, sinful body and finally go to heaven and be with God and Jesus. Finally. You get off this God-forsaken, fallen planet full of sinners and people that do not love Jesus. You see? It's all under the umbrella of self-loathing. It's all under the umbrella of complacency. Because you have won the game. You've already finished the race. Because you've won. Your team wins. So it doesn't matter how much you mess up. It doesn't matter. You still win. God forgives you. It doesn't matter. That's complacency. God forgives you. Jesus forgives you. It doesn't matter. It's okay. You'll do your best. Just go out and do better. Jesus forgives you. You deserve forgiveness. This is not how you foster appropriate behavior, folks. Just like you don't foster appropriate behavior out of your child by telling them how bad they are. You encourage them by telling them how great they are. You encourage them by saying, you're going to do awesome on this test. You're going to pass and get an A. And you are going to do so awesome, and I so believe in you, little Johnny, little Jenny. I so believe in you, you're going to do awesome. This is what any good parent does. And it comes right out of you, because any good parent doesn't have to be taught this. You naturally are inclined to do that, because you believe in your kid, unconditionally. Why is it then, when it comes to spiritual matters, it is the opposite approach? Why is it? The approach is, fundamentally, you are a sinner. You have failed the test. You have already failed the test. Now, you can sugarcoat that all you want. But look at it for what it is. Look at the psychology for what it is. You can make it sound as nice as you want, and Jesus' grace emphasized and all that stuff. But go back to the fundamental. Why do you need Jesus' grace? Why do you need Jesus' forgiveness? Because you're dirty. Why is the psychology then? If this is the truth, if this is the truth of God, the truth of all the universe, the greatest truth that has ever been portrayed to man, why is it then? It isn't even as compassionate in its approach as a compassionate parent to their child. Why? Why does the approach have to be threat? Why would you want to ever do that? Why would you ever foster spiritual awareness through a realm of threat? Through a realm of you have to or you need forgiveness. You must have forgiveness. Why would you ever approach that realm in this way? To go back to the original opening scene I started with, the race car driver. The race car driver can always drive that road a little bit faster. she'll never fully realize the capability of that car, because racing is art. And the spiritual, just see the spiritual world in that same sense. It can't be mastered. It can't be contained. No religion can contain it. All world religions contain truth in some sense. So the idea is to assimilate all of them, to consider all of them. And you will resonate with portions. Just like you're going to resonate with a certain kind of race car and you're not going to resonate with another. One you're going to feel comfortable in, another one you're not. And everybody's different. See, and you've got to give yourself the freedom, the liberation, to pursue that world as you see fit, that works for you, that speaks to you. Because there isn't a path. There isn't a set way, because there can't be. There couldn't be. Is there one way to drive that racetrack? Is there one way, or is there an unlimited way? Is there one way to play the timpani? Is there one way to play the organ? Is there one way to play the drums or guitar? Limitless. Why on earth would you ever then want to take the entire spiritual discipline, the entire spiritual world for a human being and funnel it down to just one belief system?